Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's installment of Mamas in Miami. We're just about to invite Alana into our chat, so bear with. And here she comes. Good morning. Hello.
Hello.
I'm
How are you?
good. How are
I'm good.
you?
Good. Long time. Well, long time that we haven't really seen each other, but not so much that we haven't talked.
Exactly. Well, welcome to Mamas in Miami,
I'm super excited.
as are we. And bear with me, I'm trying a new location in my house where I am hiding from the noise today.
But I wanted your dog in here too. She's
She
so
is
cute.
here. Miss Popcorn is actually sitting next to me today, not behind me. Um, yeah, she I think she heard her name. So we are gonna jump right in today.
Perfect.
Tere 930 says hi Alana.
Yes, I just said hi.
So welcome to Mamas in Miami, where we are navigating motherhood with unwavering solidarity and fierce love. Alana, thank you for joining our Mamas in Miami conversation today and bearing it all for
Of
us. Why don't you go
course.
ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. Oh,
Loaded
loaded
question.
question. So my name is Alana Guilarte. I am a mom, a stepmom, and I also own my company, Maven and Behavior. We are an ABA therapy clinic in South Miami. It's kind of the very short version.
That's the super condensed version, which is great because we always try to do our show in 30 minutes or less.
Yes.
So hopefully somebody's sitting there pumping with their ear pods on, just, escaping from reality for a little moment to maybe even get a laugh or some advice. So with that said, let's back up a little bit. And can you let us know what ABA stands for?
ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. So, kind of what, if you're thinking of ABA, a lot of people think autism and therapy for autism. And while, yes, primarily we are targeting kids with autism, we really work with, I always say, it works on husbands, it works on wives, it works on dogs, it works on anyone.
Well, with that said, I think we're going to have to do a separate live one day about how we can apply this to our husbands,
Yes.
because that would be fantastic to learn. I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in that.
Mhm.
Um, can you tell us how many kids you have, Alana?
Yes, I have my daughter Annabelle. She is 3, and my stepson Thomas, who is 10.
Awesome. And you may hear us at some point or another refer to Annabelle as Sprinkle,
Yes.
because Alana's been referring to Annabelle as Sprinkle since she found out she was pregnant with her.
Yeah, since before she had a name and since before we knew a gender. So
How did
the
that come
nickname was always
to
Sprinkle.
be, Alana?
So that came, you know, those apps when you're pregnant that show
Mm-hmm.
you, or like there's always like the milestone of like, oh, this week, the baby is this size. When I first found out I was pregnant, I knew very early on, and it was the size of a sprinkle, and it kind of just stuck. My best friend was like, oh my God, Sprinkle, and everyone called the baby Sprinkle. And we were kind of like, well, if it's a boy, we're gonna have to think of something a little different. Thank goodness she was a girl and the nickname stuck. And for the longest time, my stepson would actually only refer to her as Sprinkle. And a lot of people thought the name was Sprinkle. I'm like, no, 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 her name is Annabelle. But she responds to both.
You got to be careful that in school, on the first day of school where the teacher says,
Yes.
"Good morning, how would you like to be addressed?" She would so say, "I'd like to be addressed as
Yeah,
Sprinkle, please."
100%. If you know my daughter, you would definitely know that that is very true to her character.
Well, in case you ever get a phone call from school saying you'd like to address Sprinkle's actions in the classroom,
I have a feeling
be ready for
that
that one.
that's gonna come up often. I have a feeling.
And you mentioned that your stepson Thomas is 10 years
Yes.
old.
So my stepson Thomas is 10. I have been in his life since he was a year and a half, almost turning 2. So I've had a big role in raising him, which has been, it really prepared, I don't know if he prepared me very well for Sprinkle because he was an angel, whereas Sprinkle's not an angel. Um, but he has been a true joy, and Sprinkle is absolutely obsessed with him, crazy about him, and they have a really great relationship. So it was an interesting role navigating being a stepmom and then being my own mom.
Well, I know a lot of people on this platform are going to love to hear about how you blended your family. And I from the outside looking in, you were amazing about it. I mean, you guys look truly like one big happy family. It looks like you co-parent with Thomas's mom amazingly.
So we do, I think, when he was younger, that was a really big thing for me. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't stepping on any toes. And that, Thomas felt love on both sides. It wasn't that he had to pick between one or the other. I think I came in at a time where Thomas, to this point, really doesn't know his parents together. So it made my role a little bit easier. He kind of just grew up with, oh, my mom has her and her husband over there. He has a stepdad at his mom's house, and then at dad's house it was always Papa and Alana. So I think my background in working with kids really helped. I was also a teacher before becoming a BCBA, and I had always worked with kids his age. So I came in at a time where I loved that age. I helped out a lot. I think my role really kicked in a lot more when my husband and I moved in together, and Thomas was around 3. And I was doing pickup, I was doing drop off, I was doing all of those things. And I loved it, but I think that kind of accelerated my mom role a bit. So at that point
Sure.
in time, Thomas was younger, so I took it upon myself to really interact more with his mom. And a lot of times things, decisions were made between me and her, not so much between my husband and her, which made it easier for him. But then as Thomas got older, that shifted. Our relationship shifted, where now it's pretty much, Joelle and her kind of navigate whatever needs to be navigated. And I think for the most part, we've done a good job navigating everything. Hasn't always been easy. It's definitely been bumpy. There's history on both sides there, so that always plays a role. But I think for the most part, Thomas is also now getting to an age where he has more of a say in things, which is interesting. It's just kind of with every, I think, few years, the dynamic kind of shifts, and it's a kind of a pattern that you have to relearn. But we've been, we've been cruising for a little while now.
So it's not something you really prepared for. You kind of
No.
just threw yourself into the situation and
Definitely. I mean, when I met Joel, obviously I knew he had a kid. It was a little scary, a little daunting at first. I was in my 20s. And I had just come out of kind of a big relationship myself. So I was like, this is kind of a lot to get into. But Joel and I met at a football game at a tailgate, and we've been together since that day. And now it'll be 9 years in November. So it's been a lot of, I just kind of took it on. I loved Thomas. I loved everything about him. And he really was an angel. Like, could it have been if it was Sprinkle? Different story. Different story. I don't know how easy it would have been. And now he's also at an age too where when he was younger, he wanted to do more things with me, and I was kind of more the fun one. Whereas now he's
right.
like older, playing video games, and now it's more Joel is kind of taking that lead, and then I get Annabelle.
Well, what up until now, so now Thomas is 10 years old. It
Mhm.
sounds like it was very easy to gain his trust and
Yes.
affection when he was little.
Yeah.
Um, as he enters these daunting teenage
Uh,
years. Yeah. What do you foresee, or if there's been anything up until now, what's been your biggest challenge up to now? And what do you foresee the bigger challenge will be moving forward?
the biggest challenge is we got him a phone for Christmas. And
Oh,
that has, we were really pushing it off, but it just kind of felt like if we're going to do it, this is kind of the time. It felt kind of right. And I think just more navigate. I mean, now I think the hardest issue that we're having with him is just the balance of like, playing video games all the time and spending time with us, and he doesn't want to spend time with us and things like that. And I think it's going to be the same as he gets older too. And I think something that's going to come up for us as he gets older is, okay, he's going to have his friends, he's going to want to hang out with his friends, not so much with his parents, whether it's his dad or his mom. And
sure.
I think that is going to be a conflict at some point or another, where it's he'd rather be with his friends, but then is mom getting enough time, is dad getting enough time? And that's not really for him. I never want him to feel pressured of I have to spend time with this parent, I have to spend time with that parent, and I can't spend time with my friends. I hope he, at least from our house, I hope he never feels that way. But I do hope that one day we're the house where everyone wants to be too.
Do you guys celebrate holidays together as one big family or
No,
okay.
no, no. I know some people that do. We had offered to do that very early on, like very like Thomas was maybe around 2, 3 years old. We used to do birthdays together, but now everything is pretty much separate. And it works for us. It works for everyone. We had actually, with one of my friends, she's also a stepmom, and we had kind of started a stepmom Instagram live thing a few years ago, kind of during COVID, because you'd be surprised. I mean, there's definitely more and more stepmoms, stepdads, like these, blended families are coming up more and more, but there's still such a taboo. And I think too, it's everyone's kind of story is different. No one's is ever going to be exactly the same. Dynamics are different. The time that you come into a child's life is going to be different. So there's so many things that go into play, but it's been really nice finding a stepmom community where everyone kind of knows, because I think there was a lot of times where I would try to talk to my friends about certain things. First of all, my friends were in their 20s, so this was like just dealing with kids wasn't in their realm. But then on top of that, being a kid that's not your own and having a co-parent to deal with, that was like totally out of a lot of my friends' realms, and it felt kind of isolating at times. So finding this community, even if it was years later, was really really nice.
Can you share with anybody who wants to find more information on a support group for stepmoms what it is that they could do to look for? Is there a web page? Is
I
there Instagram handles?
I wish that we had kind of kept our stuff going, but Maven and Behavior kind of took off at the same time, so that was a little hard. But there are a ton of Instagram pages of, I think there's some that's like Moms of Tampa or something. There's a ton of like co-parenting pages that you'll see. If you just look up co-parenting on Instagram, there is like a plethora of information and pages and things like that. And I think that's a good place to start. I would stay away from the Facebook groups. Those get, I think in general, Facebook groups get a little catty and wild. And I think it's important, when I first became a stepmom and got into this, like Facebook was bigger than Instagram. And a lot of the things that I would see were so negative. And I think there's so many pages out there now that are showing more positive aspects of co-parenting, and not every journey is going to be perfect. There's been times where Thomas's mom and I have been very very close, and like right now we're not close, but I have my friends. Like I think having that understanding of you don't have to be a certain way just because you see that's what's happening on Instagram, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we hope that you'll reboot whatever stepmomming group that you had prepared for way back when, because part of the reason why we started Mamas in Miami was to break down those taboos,
Yeah.
right? It takes a village.
Oh,
I say it every single
yeah,
session we're on. It takes a
it
village.
does.
And we need to start breaking down those taboos and
Yes.
talking about things, because everybody feels very alone when they're momming because
Yeah,
it doesn't come with an instruction manual. That's because every family dynamic is
totally
different.
different.
So
Totally
it's
different.
great that we can all support each other on this
Yeah.
journey and, offer advice, offer what worked for us, what didn't work for us, because it's all about implementing different strategies
Yes,
just to get through,
definitely.
right?
Yeah. Just to get through.
Just to get through,
Survive.
exactly.
It's funny. I have one of my closest friends every morning. She's like, "Hi, how are you?" I'm like, "Just surviving another day, just surviving."
I get it. And
Yeah.
I want to jump back to, you had mentioned during COVID, the co-parenting. What was it like to navigate the pandemic years in two different households? Did you
Tough.
guys have to quarantine to receive Thomas in your home, or how did that
So
work?
it was a little tough at the beginning navigating, because Thomas's mom and stepdad work for Target, so they kind of never stopped working.
Okay.
And there was always, there was a lot of fear at the beginning of what's going to happen. It crazy, crazy, crazy. So at the beginning it was a little hectic, but then kind of things, we were doing it. We kept our schedule as much as we could. Luckily at the beginning we didn't really have any scares. Joelle and I were working from home. We were barely going out, and within a month into the pandemic I got pregnant. So we really weren't going out.
Sure.
I think as things, by kind of, I was due in December of 2020. And as we all know, things kind of picked back up again around that time. So that was a little stressful because Thomas did go back to school. And it was a parent choice at that time if you wanted your kids to go back to school or didn't. We didn't want him to, but we also knew like this was important for him to go back into school. So we were just super cautious as we could be. But I think we did a good job at handling it, where we would kind of keep him separated from me for a little while until he disinfected, and then brought him back. When Annabelle was born, that was another layer of everything, but we made it. We survived. It wasn't the easiest, but I don't think it was a particularly, I think there was moments that were hard, but it wasn't anything crazy.
Well, I'm glad to hear because I
Yeah.
had completely forgotten that you were pregnant during the
Yes.
pandemic. So that's just
Not.
an added layer of
Yeah.
fear of getting
Yeah.
sick and the unknown and
10 out of 10 don't recommend.
right.
The only thing that was, it was kind of nice giving birth during the pandemic, because I felt like, had my family been able to come into the hospital, it would have been crazy. And that was kind of nice to just have that, I wasn't even in the hospital for 48 hours. They wanted me in and out.
Right.
But it was kind of nice to just have that alone time and then get to all the craziness at home. But everything else sucked. Like, oh, awful, awful. Joel didn't go to any appointment with me.
That's
So,
what I hear a lot,
yeah.
which for me, not having had pregnancies during the pandemic, I always had somebody with me.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine what that must have been like to be alone.
Yeah, it was crazy, and I think I don't know if I've ever told you the story, and we might not have a total all the time for this day, but short story. We had done genetic testing prior to getting pregnant, and Joel and I had both tested positive as carriers for some wild gene that, like, even my OBGYN was like, "Oh, I doubt that he'll test positive too. There's just like a very low chance." Turns out, yes, he also tested positive. We're both carriers for this gene that if we pass it on, basically if the baby survives past 6 months, that's like a miracle. So we were like, oh my God, do we start trying? Do we not? What do we do? And then we would have to wait till at least 12 weeks to do the CVS genetic testing to see if she was also a carrier or if it had passed down to her. So there was the beginning of my pregnancy was not ideal. It was you were just kind of waiting for this test to be cleared. So I found out at 15 weeks that she's also a carrier like us, but it wasn't, I don't even know what the like medical terminology would be for it, but she obviously doesn't have that gene. She's thriving, she's great, she's a carrier. So eventually, when she goes to have kids, she will also need to be tested, and her husband, whatever that may look like. So it was kind of just sitting in all those appointments, doing all of those things alone wasn't fun, wasn't ideal. I mean, we made it through, but it was the first 15 weeks were very scary, and we waited a while to tell a lot of people. Our closest friends and family knew, but we were kind of keeping things under wrap until we knew for sure
Sure.
genetic testing was fine.
Sure. And I actually
Yeah.
also think, and we're going completely off tangent, and Lizzie's going to kill me because she's so great about keeping things on task.
That's my fault, sorry.
But when you're with me, when you're with Chrissy, we're going to go off topic. So before I want to go back to Thomas and how you introduced the idea of having a
Yeah.
sibling to Thomas. But before I do that, I
Mhm.
wanted to also mention that I think that there needs to be a break in the taboo of staying quiet for the first three
Yeah.
months because you are dying
Yes.
inside, waiting for whatever news, when all you really want is the support of another parent to say, I'll hold your hand.
Yeah.
We're going to get through this, whatever come may. I remember when I first got pregnant, they told me, don't tell anybody until
Yes.
3 months. Well, why? Why? And even if you do, heaven forbid, lose a baby, for example,
Yeah.
that's why people don't realize
How
how
important
many
it is.
miscarriages happen
Yeah.
because nobody talks
Yeah.
about it and how common it is, especially first pregnancies,
Hmm.
right? In the first 3 months, anything can happen,
Yeah.
and
It's and
and nobody knows this.
Yeah. And then you're suffering on your
Right.
own, and it shouldn't be that way.
So that's the barrier we're trying to
Yeah.
break here. But I want to go back and I want to ask you, how did you prepare Thomas for a step sibling, or do you not refer, or a half sibling, I should say, correct?
So yeah, it's half sibling. It was easy actually. He was when I got pregnant, he had just turned 5, and he already had a sibling at mom's house.
Okay.
So he when he was about 3.5, his mom had a baby too. I think he was around 3. So it was kind of, he was super excited for a sibling. He was on board for it. He wanted a girl. He did not want a boy. So that was like,
No
okay,
pressure.
no pressure at all. Luckily, Sprinkle's a girl. Everything was fine. He was super excited. And like, since the day we brought her home to the hospital, it was like He was obsessed with her. He now wishes that she was still a baby because now she's like terrorizing him.
Right.
But it was very, it was, we were super lucky. He was like obsessed with, and it was funny on the way home from the hospital. I was like, I can't wait to see Thomas's reaction. I can't wait to see him with her. And Joel's like, he's gonna pay attention to her for 2 seconds, and then that's it. He did not leave her sight for the first like 48 hours. Like he
Hmm.
was just there. I have so many videos of him like going into the crib and like trying to give her a kiss. It was like he's the best big brother. He really
Oh,
is. Yeah,
that's
he's
so
very good.
sweet.
Yeah, he's good.
What a lovable boy.
He is. He is. We're super spoiled and lucky with him
Yeah.
because he's an angel.
Well, it sounds like, you've been very lucky and you have just a wonderful blended family experience.
It's yeah, again, nothing's been perfect, but I think at
Right.
the end of the day, we've been pretty lucky, and my family has embraced Thomas, and have absolutely adored him from day one. Particularly my grandmother. They were very, very, very close. She would pick him up a lot from school, take him for ice cream, and he was very much affected by her passing. Even with my grandfather, it was my grandfather passed away 2 years ago, and we were shocked at how much it impacted him. It was kind of the first death that he had really ever experienced.
Sure.
So when we saw that, we're like, oh, when my grandmother passes, like this is gonna be a totally different experience. And but everyone absolutely adores him. He's very easy to love too, which is nice.
He
Makes it
seems that
easier.
way. I honestly can't wait to meet him because you post so much about Thomas
Yeah.
that I feel like I know him.
And it's been a long time. I don't post as much about him anymore just because he's usually in his room playing Fortnite. So it's
I know.
hard.
My son
Yeah,
too.
I know. It sucks. It sucks, but we're here. We're here. We're surviving.
What advice could you give to a mom that is about to embark on the stepmom journey?
Oh, so many things. That's another loaded question. Um, I think conversations with your partner, very honest and open always. I will say I think Joel and I are not perfect by any stretch, but I think when it comes to co-parenting, if we're fighting, that's usually what it's about. Just like differences of opinion about how he might handle things, how I might handle things. And it's not to say he's right, I'm wrong, or vice versa. But I think you guys always have to be on the same page because at the end of the day, it's your relationship now. It's not the other person. Yes, their child is just as important and it's a big factor, but I think really open and honest communication with your partner, I think, is first and foremost for navigating that journey. And then kind of too, always having an understanding. I hate to say knowing what your role is, but kind of understanding what the dynamics are. I think I think it's easy sometimes for especially very motherly women to kind of want to jump in and do all the things. And maybe you don't have to do all the things. And I think sometimes you want to do all the things and you start doing all the things and then you kind of get resentful that it's either not appreciated, not reciprocated, things like that. So kind of having that understanding, but I think just like being a mom, it's a journey and taking it day by day. But I think more than anything of what to do with your stepchild or how to navigate the co-parent, I think having a really solid relationship with your partner and communication in regards to what this is going to look like for all of you is more important than anything.
That's great advice for somebody who has to prepare emotionally, I think,
Yeah.
before they jump in.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's not something, you can take lightly. It also depends too. I know families that maybe aren't with the child all the time. Thomas is with us a big amount of time. It's almost a 50-50 split. So he's very much part of our family. And like if we're doing vacations, it's planned around Thomas. It's not like, oh, we're doing all of these things without him. We wait to do a lot of things to make sure that he's part of it too. So you have to kind of be okay with that maybe your schedule, your day-to-day life isn't going to be what you imagine or perfect.
I commend you for that, Alana, because one thing I've noticed with things that you post, I remember that there was probably a holiday where maybe he had COVID and you stopped
Yes.
everything and you literally moved Christmas to another
Mhm.
day so Thomas could be a part of it.
Annabelle's first Christmas.
And I think
We
that's
weren't we weren't
amazing.
thrilled about it. It wasn't the best. it was definitely wrong. And that's where, emotions come in, because it's not just about missing Thomas. It was also Annabelle's first Christmas. Joelle's family had COVID. Even this past year, Thomas was super sick around Christmas. Annabelle ended up getting really sick around Christmas, and we kind of knew it was going to be my grandmother's last Christmas, and I was a wreck, a wreck, a wreck, a wreck. But it's like Joelle always says, and this is a big thing that you'll hear in the step parenting community is, it's just a day on the calendar. It can be moved to another day. But, when you see everyone else celebrating a certain way, you want to be part of that too. But you kind of, I think it's not that it doesn't get easier. I think it does get a little bit easier over time, but when there's certain things that you want and you want to celebrate a certain way, that's where it gets a little tricky, but day by day.
Sounds like you let things roll off your shoulder very easily. And it sounds like you just have to be very fluid and
You
accepting.
do. I wouldn't say I'm the best at that. My husband would definitely tell you that I'm not good at letting things roll off. I think it takes a lot of practice. Again, I've been on this journey for 9 years now, so sometimes are easier than others. There's some things that I've gotten more used to than others, some things not. I think it was definitely easier navigating when Annabelle wasn't in the picture. Now we do have Annabelle in the
Sure.
picture, so you wanna share in things as a family. Um, but it kind of just reopens a lot of things, and then you have to figure out how to navigate now with Annabelle and all of that fun stuff. But if you can let things roll off, will your journey be a lot easier? 100%. But I'm not that way at all. I might show it, but I think the best advice I got in college was fake it till you make it, and I live by that.
That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. It's what we're all doing. Parenting, you're basically like, all right, well, we're taking this as we go. We're figuring it out as we go.
What do you envision your where do you guys want to be in 20 years, the four of you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, and something kind of that we talk about a lot. I hope that Annabelle and Thomas are still as close as they are now. We do not plan on having any more kids, so that is her sibling, and I hope that they are very, very close. Um, I'm hoping maybe that we're both retired and living a life of luxury. And not a peasant life, I hope. And yeah, I think a big thing for us, we love to travel. And as hard as it is, we really love to travel with our kids.
Yeah.
And I hope we're doing a lot more of that. And hopefully, in 20 years, maybe with Thomas's family. And I hope that Annabelle hasn't made my hair completely full of gray hair by then.
One day I would love to have a conversation with you about how you managed to travel to Europe
Yes.
with a baby in a coche and Thomas to vineyards in Italy, of
Yeah.
all places, the last place you take a
Yep.
baby to,
Yep.
and how you ended up on a separate plane with Annabelle.
Uh, and how we had COVID that
Oh,
trip.
well, we're going to get into that another
Yeah.
day because what I want to talk to you about on Friday is about Maven and behavior and how
Yay.
you became such a ray of sunshine to kids with autism spectrum and other
Yay.
disabilities. So, everybody, please come back here on Friday at 9 a.m. We're going to continue talking to Alana. And for today, what are your final thoughts on stepmomming, Alana?
On stepmom, I think taking it a day at a time and finding your stepmom village. It takes a village to raise any child, but I think finding a stepmom village is also super, super important. So you feel supported because you're definitely not alone.
Well, with that said, I'm going to add your handle to this conversation. So if anybody wants to reach out to you personally, I know that you're an open book and I encourage everybody to reach out to you. That's all the
Thank
time we have
you.
for today. We will see you guys all back here on Friday.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.